What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to rebuild the UI for Spotify using Tailwind CSS. I've always been a fan of Spotify's UI, and it is one of the first apps that I can remember that had a dark mode even before dark mode was cool. Now I'm going to be using the desktop version of Spotify on Mac, which you can see here, but note that there's also a web version which is slightly different. So I have this ongoing project where I store all of my Tailwind rebuilds, and it is a Nuxt project, and this is the finished version. So if you want to see what we'll be recreating, just click on Spotify, and here is the rebuilt version of Spotify based on this desktop version here. So yeah, it's not exactly the same. The fonts are not the same, the icons are not the same. Obviously I don't have access to those. The colors are not exactly the same, but after a first pass I think it's pretty good. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so now I have a blank app here, and this is what we're starting with. So if you look at the layout of Spotify, you'll see that we have two sections here, and they scroll independently of one another. And we have this section on the bottom that is fixed to the bottom where you have the player controls. So if you look at this layout, and if you look at Discord's layout, which I rebuilt a few months ago, you'll notice that it's quite similar. Discord is actually much more involved with more sections here. So we'll be making use of some of the techniques I used in this video. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we want to do is use Flexbox and have a flex direction of column, so top to bottom. So the first flex item would be everything up here, and then the second flex item would be the player controls down here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say flex and flex call. And let's give it our two flex items. So let's say top and bottom. Okay. And let's give some colors here so we can see it. BG blue 500 and then BG blue 300. Okay. And let's make this top one flex 1, just so it spans the entire height of the screen, and that's not going to do anything yet. We have to set everything to 100% or 100 viewport height, so that's H screen. Cool. So now we have our two sections, top and bottom. Now for this top one, it's going to have the sidebar right here and the content area right here. So let's go ahead and make that flex as well. So this will be flex as well. Let's put it after the flex one. And it'll have two sections, the sidebar and the content area. Okay, and say content area and say sidebar here. Okay, and let's give it colors as well. Say BG red 500 and BG red 300. Okay, cool. Let's set the content area to flex 1, so it's the entire width. So flex 1. Okay, cool. And let's add some content in here, in both sections actually, so we can start working on the independent scrolling. So let's say norm 250. Cool. But you see it's pushed over, so what we have to do is give this a width and set it to flex none so it doesn't change width. So the width I'm using is width 48, which is a default width in Tailwind. I believe it's default. Let's see. Spacing. Yeah, so 48 is 12 rems. So let's use that and set it to flex none, so it doesn't grow or shrink. Cool. See if that works. Awesome. And now you can see the scrolls. And let's set some content in the content area as well. Say lorem 2000. Cool. And there we go. But as you see, the entire thing is scrolling, and we want the different sections to be scrollable. So let's go ahead and work on that. So what we have to do is set the first flex item, so this entire red area, so yeah, the red part, not the bottom part, to overflow Y hidden. So it's this one right here. But now we won't be able to scroll. But now we just have to add in the sections we want to be scrollable and set overflow Y auto. So it'd be for these two sections here. So for the sidebar, overflow Y auto, and now that should be scrollable, and it is cool. And let's do the same for the content section. So after this right here, that's the content area. Auto, yep, let's see if this works. Awesome. So that is our general layout. This is probably the most important thing to get working correctly when you're working on a UI like this. So make sure you get it right. So yeah, let's go ahead and continue. So if you look at the sidebar here, you'll see that there's actually 3 parts of this sidebar. So this part up here is fixed, and so is this bottom part where it says new playlist. And then the only thing that's scrollable is this thing in the middle, so your library and playlists. So let's go ahead and work on that. So we have to set this to flex as well, and we want it to be in the flex call direction. So let's do that. So let's do, it's this one, right? It's this one right here. So it's the sidebar. So it's flex, flex call. And we want to justify between. So we have 3 items and they are evenly spaced. So now we need 3 items here. So let me just remove this for a sec. All this stuff here. And now, like I said, we want 3 items in here since it's now a flex container. So 1, 2, 3. So the sidebar would be 2 now, or the scrollable section. And let's just see if this works. Okay, so that's kind of looking like what we want, but we lost the ability to scroll. And that's because we just have to set overflow Y auto to the thing we want to scroll. So now it should be on 2. And let's put some stuff in here. So lorem 250. And let's see if this works. And it does. If you look closely, it does work. 1's up there, it's pinned to the top. 3 is down here, it's pinned to the bottom, but we can scroll too. And if you look at Spotify, that's exactly what's happening here. So I think I did this for the Discord video where I stopped and made certain commits after certain points. So I'm going to do that here. And let's go ahead and stop this. And I'll make a commit for having the initial layout working. So git commit Spotify initial layout. And I spelled initial wrong. Cool. Okay, let's work on the sidebar some more. Actually, let's work on the colors first. So let's replace everything with the proper colors. Now, if you look at Spotify, there are 3 shades of gray. So we have the sidebar, which is the darkest. This is slightly lighter, and this is slightly lighter here for the player. So initially, I just used gray 900, gray 800, and then gray 700, but it didn't look too good. So I actually just stole Spotify's colors here. So let's go ahead and do that. So if you look at the darkest one, it's 1212, 18, and then 28. So I'm just going to add this to my Tailwind config, and we'll change our layout here. So let's go into our Tailwind config, and let's go up here to our colors, and I'm going to paste in those 3 colors. I named them gray 900 Spotify, gray 800 Spotify, gray 700 Spotify. So let's go ahead and use those. So I'm going to go back into VS Code. Actually, I am in VS Code. Let's go back into Spotify. And let's replace everything here. So we no longer need this BG blue 500. And that's behind everything because we're using red for this stuff. So for the red 500, that should be gray 900 Spotify. So BG gray, and as you can see, it shows up in the IntelliSense. This is a great plugin, by the way, if you're using Tailwind in VS Code. I believe it's called Tailwind IntelliSense. Okay, see, this works. Oh, sorry, I gotta rerun my npm run dev here. Okay, and now you see the sidebar color changed. And let's go ahead and change the others here. So this one, what was it? BG red 300, I believe. Yeah, so this one would be BG gray 800 Spotify. And then the BG blue would be BG gray 700 Spotify. Cool. Awesome. So I'm also going to set some defaults for the text here. So let's go back here. And all the way up here, let's just add text SM and text gray 400 to be our default text size and color. Cool. And let's go ahead and quickly style the scroll bars. And I did this in the Discord video, and I believe it was from a CSS Tricks scroll bar style article. Yeah, this. So just go ahead and read this. And this is exactly what I did. So I'm just going to paste it into the CSS for that. Unfortunately, you can't do it with utilities because it uses this pseudo selector. So I'm going to paste in some CSS in my, I believe I have a tailwind.css, yep. And there's nothing in here right now, but like I said, I have to add some custom CSS for the scroll bars to work. So yeah, I'm just going to put it in the style section here in our Spotify view component. Let's see if this works. So yeah, I'm just going to paste this in, and we have to add these classes to what we want to style. So there's two things that you need to style: the actual scroll bar and the background of the scroll bar. So this is the actual scroll bar, and this is the background of the scroll bar. So we have to add the sidebar Spotify and the content Spotify classes. So the sidebar Spotify would be where this is. So let's add it here. Okay. And the content Spotify would be right here. So let's change this content area to content Spotify. And let's see if this works. And it did. Awesome. So yeah, this only works for WebKit browsers and not for Firefox. Okay, let's work on the home, browse, and radio section here. So it's this first section up here. Let's go ahead and do that. So let me just go back there for a second. Okay, so I'm going to set everything in there to semi-bold or font semi-bold. Actually, no, that's for the entire sidebar. Yeah, so that goes up here. Font semi-bold. And for this, let's just give it some padding on the top and the bottom. Say PY6. And see how that looks. Cool. And I actually have it as an unordered list in the finished product. So I'm just going to stick with that. So instead of a div, this whole thing is in unordered list. And then we have list items here for each of the home, browse, and what's the other one? Radio. Let's go ahead and add the first one. So it's class equals border. There's a border on this one. It's the selected item. So let's go ahead and add that. Border L4. And it's border green, say 600. Okay, and within that, let's add an anchor tag. And it's not going into anything. and say flex items center. Say mx4 and mt4. Okay. And here is where the SVG will go. So let's just say SVG for now. And this is home. So see if that looks okay. Cool. And why is the border not rendering? Because I spelled green wrong. Cool. So let me just add one SVG in there, and then I'm just going to paste in the rest of the code. So I'm not sure which home icon I used. Probably this one here. So I'll just search for it here in icon jar. And I'm just going to use this one. Let's copy as SVG inline code. Let's go to SVGO to optimize it. Let's paste it. And let's grab it here. So it used to show up in here. And the last few months or so, it stopped showing up in there, but it does work. So I'm going to paste it in here as an SVG. And let's just see if anything renders out. So in here, and you might not be able to see it, but there is a dark house icon there. So we have to add class equals fill current, or you can do fill equals current color. And let's go ahead and do text white. Okay. Cool. And let's just put a margin left on this and set to white as well. Awesome. So yeah, I'm just going to paste the other two in just to save some time here. Okay, so I pasted those in, and one subtle thing I want to show you is group hover within Tailwind. So right now when I hover over this, it's only changing the color of the text here. So what I want to have happen is change the color of the icon as well. So I already have the group hover code for it available. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So let's look for group hover here. Okay. So group hover. So if you read this, if we want to use group hover, we just have to set the parent to a class of group, and then do group hover, and then the utility class here, just like hover. So I already have that in my markup. So for each of these items, I have a group class here, and the children have group hover text white on them. But we also have to set it in our variants here. So if you look at this, in our Tailwind config, we have to add it as a variant. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to add it to text color. So let's go into our Tailwind config up here. And do I have anything set for variants? I do not. So we have to add the text color in there. And let me save that. And now, hopefully, if I did that right, we should have group hover working. And it does. Cool. Okay, now let's work on this section, the scrollable section in the sidebar, which has my library and my playlists. It's pretty straightforward. It's just text and spacing. So let's go ahead and work on that. So that would be this section over here. So I'm going to add some padding here, bx5, and let's give it a margin top of 2. Cool. And let's go ahead and add your library. So let's do that quickly. I'm going to remove all of this now. And my VS Code is no longer responding. So I want to switch to VS Code full time, but stuff like this, I think it's just my computer because I have a very low amount of RAM. And I think one of my plugins might have a memory leak. But after using VS Code for say an hour, I start to lose a lot of its functionality. For example, I'm hitting tab right now and it's not even tabbing. And most shortcuts stop working and I have to restart it for it to start working again. So I think it's just one of my plugins. I don't know which one it is, unfortunately, but that's one of the reasons I can't switch to VS Code completely. So yeah, I'm going to restart my VS Code. Okay, so let's add that heading in there. So I'm going to make it an H3, say uppercase. Let's make it tracking widest. Say your library. And let's add some more classes here. Text, gray 500. Let's make it not bold. And let's make it extra small. So again, I've done this before, so I already know the classes. Cool. And it's in the middle, but that's fine because we're going to populate it. So yeah, I'm just going to paste in the library list items in here. So yeah, I'm just going to paste it in here. It's an unordered list of list items. And I also have the truncate class on them, because if it's too long, then it will just do ... instead of going to the next line. So let's go see how that looks. Okay. Not sure why the tracking is not working. I mean, not the tracking, the leading, the line height. Should be extra loose. Should be more space between that. Oh, it's because leading extra loose is a custom class that I added. Loose was not enough for me, so I had to add extra loose. So let's go ahead and add this to our Tailwind config, and that should do the trick. So I'm just going to add it to my extends key here. Let's put it after font size. So line height extra loose is 2.5. I believe loose is 2. And that should fix it. Cool. And now it is spaced more in between each item. Okay, so the next section is pretty much the same, just playlists. So I'm going to paste that in as well. Okay, so you see the playlists are in there now. And you can see for the long ones, it truncates it off with the 3 dots there, which is what we want. Okay, let's work on the next section, which is this new playlist. So let's go ahead and do that. I believe that's right here. Cool. And as you see, there is a border on top of it, very subtle. So let's add that. So border T, border gray, say 800. And let's give it a height of 16. Let's give it some padding. And let's make it a flex container as well, because we want an icon in there. So flex, let's make it item center. And we want that group hover as well. So let's do that. See how that looks. Cool. And I'm just going to paste in the SVG. I just got it from my collection of SVG icon sets here. You can see them all here if you're curious. And then I just search for what I need. I forgot where I got it from. I just searched for plus maybe. So I probably use this one here. So again, I'm just going to paste it in. So let's paste it in. So that's the first flex item. And then the second flex item is the new playlist. Again, my VS Code is no longer responding. So I am going to start being lazy and pasting stuff in. Again, it's just a link and some styles for the text and the group hover thing that I showed you earlier. And now this should work. There we go. Cool. And if I hover over it, it works. Awesome. So yeah, that takes care of the sidebar. So I am going to go ahead and make a commit here. So let's go ahead and stop this. And let's add commit, say Spotify sidebar complete. Cool. Okay, let's continue. Let's work on the bottom section here with the player. So again, flexbox, justify content space between, and we'll have 3 flex items. We'll have this section on the left, which is the current song that's playing. We'll have this section in the middle, which is the player controls, and then we'll have the section on the left for volume controls and some other controls here. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's open up VS Code, and let's go down to the section with the player controls here. So it's this one here. And let me just add flex none so it doesn't grow or shrink. Let's give it a height. I think 22 I might have to add to my Tailwind config. px5. And it's, like I said, let's make a flex box. Item center and justify between. Okay. So let me just check my Tailwind config if I have 22 in there for spacing. So I have to add that here. Okay. And save this. And I think I have to rerun my server here. Okay. So let's see how that looks. Okay. Let's go ahead and add our flex items in here. So we need 3, like I said, for left, center, right. So let's start with one on the left. So that would be this one. So this needs to be flex as well. Say item center as well. Again, I forgot to restart my VS Code. So let's do that again. Okay. And the first flex item will be the image. So it's going to be a link, and there's an image in there. So let's add the image. And I already have a bunch of album covers, fake album covers in my static folder, and I can just refer to it like this. 01.jpg, say album cover, and let's give it a specific width and height of 14. And that should render it out. And 14 might be custom. Yes, it is. So let me just put that in my Tailwind config. So I'm going to add 14 here. Okay. Okay, cool. And then the next flex item is going to be just the name of the song and the artist. So let's put that in a div. And let's give it a margin left. And the first line would be the name of the song, and that's a link as well. So let's put it in div. And let's say name of song. And then the next section would be the artist name. So let's put artist name in here. And let's put some classes in here. This is text extra small, text gray 500, say hover underline, and hover text white. And let's put hover underline for this as well. Let me just grab this. Class equals hover underline, cool. Okay, it looks pretty good. Okay, now for the next section, which is the player controls. So we have 2 sections here, the actual player controls and the progress bar. So let's go ahead and get that in place. Go back into our code. And we need a second flex item here. So this is the first one. So this is the second one here. Let's give it a class, player controls. And let's make it flex, but let's make it flex call, so top to bottom. And justify center will center it. And for the first section, so that would be the actual controls, like I said. So this, let's give this flex as well, and it's just going to be a bunch of buttons. So flex and justify center to center it. And like I said, just a bunch of buttons. So let me just, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just see if it renders correctly. And then I'll just paste in the SVGs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, so it is rendering, but it's on the right. That's because we don't have our third flex item yet. So let's add that in, just so this section centers. So player controls, and let's add a third one here. What should I call this? Say volume controls. And say volume. Just so we can get that in the center. And there we go, cool. And so those are the buttons. We still need the progress bar underneath. So let's add that. So that would be the next flex item here. And again, let's make it flex. Item center, justify center. And it's just going to have 3 flex items. So the time elapsed, is that elapsed? Yeah, I think it's elapsed. And then the progress bar, and then the time remaining. Cool. So let's add those 3. So let's just add, say, 120. And we're just going to make a fake progress bar here. Let's just say progress. And let's put some other time in here. Okay. Cool. So let me just make a fake progress bar here. So let's give it a background of gray 500. Let's make it rounded. Let's give it width full. But on desktop, let's give it a fixed width. And I think I need to add width 200 to my Tailwind config. Height of 1. And a margin left of 3. Let's also put a margin left of 3 here. And let's add that 200 to our spacing here. So let's go into here. So 200 divided by 4 is 50. So let's add that. 200 is 50 rems. Okay, and let's see if that renders okay. Okay, so it looks good. We no longer need this progress. So yeah, we can just keep this blank. And this is spelled wrong. Cool. Yeah, and that looks pretty good. So just some tweaks here for these two. Actually, let me add this first. And I'm going to put the cursor in here. Just make it a bit smaller and give it a different color. Cool. And let's just put some extra classes here. So max width full. Let's give it a margin. And that should do it. Okay, looking good. So for the icons here, like I said, it's just a bunch of icons, and you just have to make sure you have the icons for the different player actions here. And I just, like I said, I just searched through my icon set here and picked out appropriate ones. So I'm just going to paste those in. Okay, so let's go ahead and paste everything in here. Again, it's just buttons with SVGs within them. And now let's see how this looks. And it looks pretty good. Okay, now let's work on the right section here, which is just a bunch of icons. And similar to this progress bar here, I just faked it as well. So it's basically the same thing as what we just did here with the icons. So again, I am going to paste stuff in. And let's just make this flex item center. And now I can just paste in those buttons with the icons in them. And now that should render. Cool. So that should be the bottom bar. Yep, it looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and make another commit here. So let's say Spotify finish bottom bar. Cool. Okay, now let's work on the top bar. So this section here with the back and forward buttons, the search, and the profile dropdown. And this is fixed to the top, so let's make sure to do that. So back into our code. Let's look for whatever I have here. So content area. Content area, okay. So like I said, the top bar is fixed to the top. And we can use fixed positioning if you want, but I'm going to stick with using flexbox here. So what I'm going to do is set this to flex and flex direction call. So the first flex item will be the top bar, and then the second flex item would be the rest of the content. So let's go ahead and do that. So flex call, and then let's get rid of all this. And then the first flex item would be the top bar. Say top bar, and say top bar goes here. And then the second flex item will be the content area. Content goes here. And let's just remove this. Cool. See if this works. Okay, so that does work, but we have to put the overflow Y auto on what we want to scroll. So it would be on this section now. Cool. And let's add some text here to make sure it works. Awesome. So you can see the top bar is fixed to the top. Okay, now for the top bar, we can just use flexbox again, and we'll have two flex items, one for the left and one for the right. And each of these will have, or will be their own flex container as well, and we'll just position the elements there. Cool. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's start right here. So this will be flex, items center, justify between, and let's give it some spacing. And then the first flex item has to be flex as well, and let's give it item center. And just like before, this is just a list of buttons. So these two are buttons, and then we'll have this search input. So 3 flex items. So say 1, 2, 3. See if that is correct. Cool. And the first two are just chevrons left and right. So as I've been doing to save time, I'm just going to paste in the buttons and the appropriate SVG icon. So the first two I'm going to replace with buttons. Okay. And then the third one I will do manually. Cool. So those are the chevrons. And for this, I will add a margin left. And let's make it relative because we have to use some absolute positioning to get the search icon in there. So this is where the search input goes. Let's give it a placeholder of search. And say BG white, text gray 800. Say placeholder gray 800, rounded full px3 pl8 and py1. Okay, see if that renders. Cool. And now let's add the search icon. So like I said, we have to absolutely position this. So let's go ahead and make a div absolute, and let's make it top 0. And this is where the SVG goes. So I'm just going to paste that in. It's just a standard search SVG. And make sure to add fill current and the color you want it. And I've added some padding here to position it precisely. So let's see if this works. And that is pretty good to me. And yeah, this should probably be a form, but I'm just going to leave it as just an input. Okay, so the next section is just this. And this is pretty straightforward. It's just flex with 3 items, or 3 icons in this case. So I am just going to paste that in. So back to our code. So that would be justify between. So this is the first flex item, and that ends right here. Again, my VS Code stopped working. So hopefully this is the right place. Let's see if this works. Okay, it is. Cool. So there's just some extra padding on this one. Wait, did I get that right? Am I missing something? No, that's right. Okay, so yeah, this one just has some extra padding on the left. This chevron down here. Cool. So yeah, that's the top bar. I think that's all for the top bar. If you look at the original Spotify, there is a gradient here, which I'm not going to bother doing, but yeah, that's just one thing extra if you want to make it look exact. So yeah, that's good enough for me, like I said. And I'm just going to add Spotify finish top bar. Okay, so the last section is this content section. So let's go ahead and work on that. So that's this section right here. So let me just remove all this. And I want to have this within a container. So let's add a container class. And let's say MX Auto. And let's see if it's centered now. Or if it's within a container, and it is. Cool. So let's go ahead and add this home heading. So let's add that. And I'm going to make it an H2. And there's a big margin top on it. And say text 5XL. Font semi-bold. And text white. And say home. See if that looks okay. Awesome. And now we just have different sections for these here. So I'm just going to do one of them, and then I'll just paste in the rest. So let's say, give it a div. Let's give it a margin top. And let's start with recently played. So let's make this an H3. Let's make it semi-bold. Let's make it text XL. There's a border on it. Gray 900. And let's give it a padding. This one's called recently played. Okay. Cool. And now we have to make a grid here. So a grid of 5 items. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to make it flex, items center, and let's give it a margin top. So let's go ahead and make the first flex item, so the first grid item. So like I said, I'm doing 1/5, so 5 columns. So width 1/5, and let's give it a px of 4 for some gutter grid, or some gutter padding, I mean. And just see if this looks okay. And let's duplicate this a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See if this looks okay. Okay, and it does. So what we need to do is, since we have a px4 here in the parent, we have to give it a negative mx4 to compensate. Cool. So I believe in the next version of Tailwind, which should be coming out soon, there's going to be first-class support for CSS Grid if you prefer to do your grids that way. I've actually had no issues with Flexbox, so I'm okay with using this way. So now we just have to fill out the content. So the first thing is obviously the image, and then the title, and then the description, and then the followers. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to put this back to just one, and then it's going to copy and paste the rest. So the first thing is the image. So let's put it within a div, put it within an anchor tag, and then let's add an image tag. And let's just say album cover 2.jpg, album cover. Okay. And then the next thing is, so I'm just going to make it within one div. And then say, this is the title. And what do I have here? Acoustic pop covers. Acoustic pop covers 2019. See if that looks okay. And the image is not rendering. It's album cover 02, I believe. Cool. What happened to my negative margin? I'm not sure what happened to it. Let's put that back. Okay, cool. And let's go ahead and add some classes to this. Font semi-bold. Let's make it block. Hover text white. And let's give it a margin top of 2. Save that. Okay, looks good. Let's add the description. Text gray 500. Margin top of 2. Amazing acoustic. Okay. And let's add the last section here. Say tracking wide. Widest. Text XS. Text gray 500. And empty 2. And let's just put the followers in here. 6679. Oops. 6679 followers. Okay. And let's see how that looks. All right, looking pretty good. Let me just copy and paste this 4 more times. So that would be this section. Again, my VS Code is not working, so I believe it's this section here. 2, 3, 4, 5, save. And that looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna switch up the album covers and add more sections so you can scroll down. Okay, so I pasted in more content here and it looks pretty good. It looks like my scroll bar is not working anymore. I mean, it works, but it's the custom scroll bar is not working anymore. That's probably because I just pasted it in for my project and I named it differently. So content Spotify. Okay, I think it's because the scroll bar has to be on the scrolling section and I changed it up. So it has to be after the top bar. So the top bar ends here somewhere. So yeah, I have to put it on here. So let's just put content Spotify here. Hopefully that fixes it. And it does, cool. So if we look at the original Spotify desktop and our recreated version, it looks pretty good and pretty close. Again, not exactly the same, but pretty good after a first pass. So I'm not too worried about it being responsive because Spotify in general has a dedicated mobile app. And I don't know anyone that would use Spotify on their browser on a mobile device when there's a perfectly good working mobile app. So there you have it, guys. We managed to recreate Spotify using Tailwind. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.